Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey.
From the Matrix Home Solutions studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560 The Answer.
Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560 The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy, continuing our conversation about the Russian invasion of Ukraine and what it means for America, what strategic interests are at stake, and how can we protect those strategic interests. Pleased to be joined by Dalibor Roháč, who's a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Dalibor, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
And so, the strategic interests of the United States, including but not limited to the security compacts we have with Western allies in NATO. What specifically are they, and what must be done to protect them?
Look, I think it's been one of the central tenets of U.S. foreign policy since the Second World War, that we seek to maintain a favorable balance of power in Eastern Europe, because Eastern Europe had for a long time been a source of instability, source of conflict. The United States intervened, took part in two very bloody global conflicts in the first half of the 20th century. So there are certainly important interests at stake. Ukraine and Belarus are neighbors of our NATO allies, as is Russia. And if this Russian invasion of Ukraine succeeds, that would mean that Russian forces and a very unfriendly, very belligerent, and very dangerous Russia will appear immediately on NATO's doorstep with the intention, explained by President Putin, to essentially destabilize and reclaim these lost territories, which there is no reason for him, in principle, to stop in Ukraine. Unless he encounters pushback, there'll be effort to go further, by hook or by crook.
It seems to me that these NATO the leaders of the NATO countries, including the sort of foreign policy establishment in this country, are moving now from a policy of appeasement of Putin over the last decade plus, 15 years really, to a policy of containment, hearkening back to the George Kennan strategy with the old Soviet Union. Is that where you see this going, a policy of containing Russia and Putin?
I think the next few days will be indicative what the policy stance of Western powers, of the United States, of NATO, European Union are going to look like going forward. I think the big mistake of the past 12 years was, since at least the Russian invasion of Georgia, has been this assumption that Russia is essentially a regional power, that it does not require as much attention from the United States and from the West as it once did when it was the Soviet Union, and whenever Vladimir Putin pushed the envelope, there was a lot of huffing and puffing and strongly worded rhetoric, but very little actual action. And I hope that there is a realization in Western capitals on both sides of the Atlantic that we need to extricate ourselves from many of the economic links and energy links to Russia, and that NATO's eastern flank needs to be much strengthened to establish proper deterrence, and also that we have a stake in this conflict in Ukraine. Nobody's arguing for sending U.S. troops to fight on Ukraine's behalf. Not even Ukrainians themselves are asking for that. But I think there are a number of low-cost ways to help Ukrainians defend themselves and also to impose substantial costs on Vladimir Putin.
What if Putin tries to take over, say, Slovakia? Then should troops be involved from the UN and from the United States?
Well, Slovakia is a NATO member country.
Right.
We are treaty bound to defend our NATO allies. My understanding is that the deterrent effect of the alliance, given the presence of US and British and other Western European soldiers on NATO's eastern flank, provides a sufficient deterrent effect. Yet we've seen Russia and Belarus engage in all kinds of hybrid warfare tactics and activities against Poland, against the Baltic states in the past. And most recently, the phony refugee crisis orchestrated on Belarusian-Polish border last year. And there is no reason to expect that, given the new sort of space of operation that then occupied Ukraine would give to Putin, that those activities would cease. I think they would escalate, and there would be every effort made to peel away some of these countries away from the alliance, destabilize them, or even to try to impose new geopolitical reality on the ground, as in the case of the Baltic countries, which quite literally can be overtaken and invaded in a weekend before NATO Council has any chance to react. So I think we need to act now, and there is a lot of catching up to do because we've lost close to a decade by fecklessness and inaction.
What is Putin's capacity? To borrow from Churchill, does Russia have the capacity to descend an Iron Curtain from Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic again?
That's an interesting question. I think if there is an Iron Curtain to be descended, I think in a way it should be us trying to impose it on Russia by extricating ourselves from the various economic links, providing a safe haven for oligarchs, laundering dirty money in Western financial capitals and Western real estate markets, rather than Putin, unlike the Soviet
I appreciate
regime, is not stopping Russians from emigrating to the West. Right? That's what the Iron Curtain in a way was for. That's what the Berlin Wall was for.
Right. No, I appreciate that and what we should be doing. But I'm just saying, if we were to continue to appease Putin as we've been doing for the last 15 years, would he? And this was his desire, which it seems to be, at least some approximation of it. Does he have the military might? Does he have the capacity to roll over those countries and create a regional power that rivaled the old Soviet Union, if nothing were done?
Of course. I mean, Russia is a big country. It's not a wealthy country by any stretch of the imagination, but Putin has made a concerted effort to beef up its military and hybrid capacities at the time when the West, and it has to be said, many of the Western European allies took a much more relaxed position. So unless he is stopped and unless he's confronted, he is not going to stop with Ukraine. I think that's fairly obvious. He has made that fairly explicit himself, both in his speech on Monday, where he said that essentially all of the former Soviet republics that became independent in the 1990s, that includes the Baltic states, in a way are not full-fledged countries, are not political nations that have the right of self-determination, but are instead ex-colonies of Russia that ought to be reclaimed back.
And what is your assessment of how much China is willing to aid and abet Putin?
I think it's too early to tell at this stage. The Chinese, both in the statements made at the Security Council and in other fora, have maintained a fairly cautious attitude towards what the Russians have been doing. They obviously have good reasons to watch the pushback if it materializes. There are big question marks over the future of Taiwan and Russian interest in Taiwan. But it's not clear that it is in the best interest of Beijing going forward to tie itself closely to a junior revisionist partner that is acting as recklessly as as Vladimir Putin is acting right now.
He is Dalibor Roháč. He's a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Dalibor, thanks for joining us. Appreciate your insights.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Did you know color is vital to your health? I'm not talking about the color of the walls in your house or your clothes. I'm talking about the color of the food you eat. A colorful diet is a part of staying well because many nutrients are color. The antioxidant lycopene is the red pigment in tomatoes and pink grapefruit. Chlorophyll is excellent for balancing pH and cleansing